Hello, hello, people of the internet. Ian Altosaar, the Freedom Astrologer here, and sitting again here with my good friend and astrologer extraordinaire, amazing person altogether, Donny
Yes, go
Lim.
on.
More and more. Of course, I can go. And we have another amazing video, and you can see behind us there's a cosmic ass, literally a cosmic ass behind us, and we're going to be using this cosmic ass to channel information and give you the best astrological information for this upcoming month of June. And Donnie, first and foremost, how are you doing?
Honestly, I can't wait for May 2022 to be over. It's actually quite a tumultuous month. But then I think in our May 2022 video, we already pointed out that it's going to be pretty intense. Particularly that total lunar eclipse, a South Node 1 in Scorpio, and it is in direct opposition to my moon. So you can only imagine like how much it has impacted on my health actually. So I've gotten like a complete wipeout of energy surrounding that, but I managed to soldier through on the backs of the current Mercury retrograde. And I'm sure that the audience will think back for most part of me when this Mercury retrograde started happening, that this one is actually more intense than the other Mercury retrogrades for the year. And you will also have that conclusion by the time 2022 finishes. And this is because every year there will be one Mercury retrograde that is slightly longer than the rest. And it is right now the one that we're experiencing right now. Because if I'm not wrong, usually Mercury retrograde is around 21, 22 days. But then this one is lasting for an extra 2 to 3 days, 24 to 25 days. And not to mention that, if you just measure how much Mercury covers zodiacally in this 24 to 25 days, it only covers like maybe like 8 to 9 degrees, whereas other Mercury retrogrades actually cover over 10-ish degrees. So you can see how slow Mercury is right now. And since Mercury is traveling so freaking slow, I think all of us have got a lot of introspection to do and a lot of like visiting past issues and trying to like iron out the kinks of things. So how have you experienced, Ian, with this Mercury retrograde?
It's yeah, I think I really love your introduction there, and I love your thoughts, because for me it has also been quite a cosmic ass of coming in to this video, to this space that we're in. And with those eclipses, and especially the Scorpio eclipse, I don't know, the points triggered in all areas of my life, and in some areas even more painfully. And today we actually wanted to start with a bit of a heavier topic, but important topic, for us both, with me and Donnie. And why we decided to also add this topic is because of these eclipses, the Scorpio eclipses. Remember, guys, we're going to have one more in autumn, and the South Node in Scorpio that Donnie already mentioned. We're excreting a lot. We're doing with these issues. We're dealing with these deeper issues. And we want to talk about a topic that is heavy. It's called, I would say it, narcissism or narcissistic behavior. And if you're watching our channels, if you're relating to the information that me and Donnie are giving out, you're most often more empathetic. You're intuitive. You're let's say in tune to the energies, and you're sensitive as a person on this planet. This very often means that you can attract people into your life that are more controlling, manipulating. They want to get energy. They want to get that juice from you. They want to get that juice out of you. Yeah. Do you want to say? Oh no. Okay.
Well, I mean, the thing is that when I think about South Node Scorpio lunar eclipse, Britney Spears, the song Toxic comes up a lot. And I think all of us in some way, shape, or form are exposed to like what has been going on for the bulk of me, which is that Johnny Depp and the ex-wife trial. And I'm sure that all of us identify with some facets of the psyche of Johnny Depp and also the ex-wife, which is Miss Heard. One thing about her that's being brought up time and time again, which are converted into memes or very laughable TikTok stuff like that, is that she's being painted as a narcissist. But more importantly, one important trait of a narcissist is that they are very skillful and masterful in the art of gaslighting. So what is actually gaslighting? Gaslighting is actually the action of overwriting another person's reality and making them feel as if their reactions, their framework, and their experience is somehow less real than everyone else's. And gaslighting works like this. You feel as if you're not allowed to express love unless someone else defines the relationship that exists between the two of you on their terms, not yours. And in that process, making your love function feel small in order to feel or to fit whatever box that they have. So if I were to talk about astrological symbols, the planets Mars, Saturn, and Neptune working together, and then the natural signs that they rule, which are Aries, Scorpio, Pisces, and Capricorn. To a certain extent, Aquarius. Somehow all of these things will have to sink into the picture. And for someone who's got that combination, in which I have personally, you can be the one doing the gaslighting or the recipient of such energy. I would say from my life experience thus far, it's mostly coming to me as in like you are being edged to the max, and then when you explode, and then whoever that's the narcissist will come and say, oh, you are exactly that piece of little turd that I think you are. And they have succeeded in their gaslighting. And if I were to bring it back to Miss Heard's chart, Johnny Depp's ex-partner, she's got Mars and Neptune in the sign ruled by Saturn, which is Capricorn, in hard aspects, squares, to both Moon and Mercury. And Mercury is in the sign of Aries, which is a Mars root sign. And so definitely a gaslighter for Johnny. And in her chart, the sign of Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and her Saturn is in a sign of Sagittarius, a Jupiter root chart. Anything that's Jupiter related, it is very much inflationary. So she can really just keep inflating, gaslight, and everything just go off the charts. And this can be, I would not say too much, but people can look for what is social media talking about her, mostly. I guess I shall end it there. And if I were to go one step further in her chart, the planet that rules over that Saturn is Jupiter, and her Jupiter is in its home sign in Pisces. So even more inflation. So you can see how everything just kind of builds and builds and builds, and just like a mushroom cloud, you know what I mean? And everything just kind of went off the charts. And that's how she actually behaved in court, when she was cross-examined or giving her testimonial, like just kind of everything is just bigger than life. And, I find it amusing that, without even knowing her chart, because she doesn't have a reliable time, I managed to use her behavior in court to rectify her chart. And I think I've hit the nail on things, in which I'll share in a different video. So Ian, do you have anything to add? Maybe we can change, or maybe we can convert. I think convert is is a better term. We can even convert this into a series.
I think this is one of the things I wanted to
Yeah.
say to you people out there listening. Me and Donnie are discussing because we've been discussing this actually maybe I don't know maybe a year. Should we do it? And we are discussing putting this kind of energy, narcissistic energy, gaslighting energy, together with astrology. Talking about aspects, talking about charts, talking about examples. Obviously, how you can help yourself as
I
well.
have a title. Do you want to hear it?
Of course,
Empaths and your narcissist. I think that can be the title of the series.
yeah. And guys, let us know in the comments below if you're interested in that energy or that type of a series, because we're planning on doing so. I want to say a couple of things as well. For me, one of the biggest aspects that you need to also look out for is Mars square or opposition Neptune. So this is a weird one, can make a person, well, say, or receive even things that are not true about them, and they're manipulated very aggressively in a sense, and the person can feel at first even like they're to blame for these things that they're being blamed for, but after introspection, after reflection, they start to understand, okay, so I haven't done any of this actually. I haven't, the blame isn't on us or me. And then, you can start to see where it's coming from the other person, what the other person is actually doing. And look out for that. And we're going to be bringing more, obviously, in that series. But guys, I wanted to bring immediately some of the things, because we're right in the thick of the thing where really everybody can experience, with your family, with your spouse, with your workmates, with the society at large. Like Donnie said, we're like the Amber Heard Johnny Depp thing is kind of like a very public display of what is actually happening in our psyches, in our society, in our consciousness on a deeper suppressed level. And now Scorpio South Node excreting, bringing it all to the surface. And I want to mention a little bit about Pluto retrograde, because Pluto just went into retrograde, and now even more of that is excreting out. And I put together a very let's say kind of like a rapid fire. If you've watched our videos, I do these rapid fires in our videos, what to do and what not to do in these situations. Let's say you are in the situation of a person trying to manipulate, trying to control you, or expressing these narcissistic tendencies. Now, one of the first things that you need to do is start to see the energy building up. The mind wants to deny that the things are happening, but you need to be vigilant and aware of observing what is happening actually, what this person is doing and how are they interacting. Start putting the pieces together. Start feeling the energy building up. You can see, obviously, the eclipses and everything will help. Now, the second, I think, is one of the most important parts. Take stock of where you are with them in every sense of the word. Now, what I mean by this, do they have control over you emotionally? Do they have control over you financially or practically? This is even more important in a sense, because they very often this person tries to weave their way into your life and experience to have that control over you. And finances, money, material, practical possessions, of course, unfortunately, in some extreme examples, children are the case as well. But you can fix, actually, the material, financial things need to become independent if you start seeing things happening there. Please really, really understand this. Living situation, another important one. If they have control and you don't have another way out, again, you're stuck in that, and they can put that energy on you. So fix those. The first things you need to fix are these, so you have more freedom there. Now, when it really starts to get heavy, maybe it comes to a confrontation, an argument, something, the energy is coming your way. They're shaming, they're blaming you about things. And this is important. You need to understand here if you have really done those things, because they make it seem like you're the worst possible person in the world. Now, it might need you to take a step back and be in solitude and say, okay, did I do these things? Most often you didn't do those things. If that energy is coming your way, it's very hard to deal with this. But if it starts to come, now is the time to also put up boundaries, because you don't have to deal with this. You don't have to take it from them. Very crucial part of this situation is to put up boundaries and to be very extremely firm with them, because they won't be honoring them at all. They will come, they will come, they will come, they will come. And now this is very tough to even talk about, but in those moments when they're coming again and they're making themselves sometimes even a victim, a very important part, they can make themselves a victim. You need to realize and understand what is happening in your mind, because in your mind, the doubt starts creeping in. Did I do it wrong? Was I the wrong person? Those types of thoughts, those types of ideas. Again, go into your space and be really firm, really understanding of what is it that you actually did. None of the things that they said, but go back in your mind and look at the things, the situations, how you handled them, what was actually there. Be really firm. And literally, you have to now be constantly firm. I would say blocking in a lot of places is a good decision, especially if the energy is constantly coming your way, because it will drain you. They will try to suck as much as they possibly can out of you. So those have to be really firm. That's my rapid fire for now. We will talk about this more in the series. Donnie, do you want to say?
Oh, well, I just want to add that if you talk about the sign and the house, just as an introduction of who can potentially embody a lot of narcissistic energy, will be the 5th house and the sign of Leo. And if you count 6 signs or 8 signs away from Leo, you end up with Capricorn and Pisces. This is how they fuel that narcissistic energy into them. Because when it's 6 signs or 8 signs, it actually forms a yacht, basically, with Leo at the tip. And if you think about Pisces, it's really playing the victim. And if you think about Capricorn, it's about the power play. Who is on top of who? And so you can see how, in terms of signs in the zodiacal order, that why Pisces is in quincunx to Leo, and why Capricorn is in quincunx to Leo as well. I just want to put it out there. So this will be like the teaser for the series. I've done a little bit of research. We are not here to roast people. We are not here to grill people. We are just making people aware that through the astrological language, how can you identify some traits and hopefully help yourself if you are in a situation whereby you feel that there's no way out?
I think this is important to understand, because as I want to just protect Leos a little bit, because I have quite a lot of Leo energy in myself, and I just want to say that if you see immediately that you see, oh my God, they have this, that it doesn't 100% mean that this person is a narcissist and will start controlling you and start manipulating you.
Actually, what I'm trying to say is that even if you got planets in Leo like yourself, Ian, you may be the recipient of narcissistic behavior.
Unfortunately, that can happen, and just be careful with your diagnosis here. Observe, look at the patterns, look at the things, have that independence, like we talked about, and then at least you are somewhat safe, somewhat free. We can put it that way. Yeah. So guys, let us know in the comments what you think about this.
We can do like a 2-part thing, one on empaths, one on the narcissist as an indicators, and just close out that little thing we've been talking about since last year. So do you want to move on to the Mars and Jupiter conjunction we are having now?
Let's talk about that, guys.
Now, it's actually
we're in the thick of it.
Oh yeah, it's close to exact actually right now.
So guys, if we're talking about last, go look at our last month's video as well with the eclipses, but also we talked about Jupiter in Aries. So there's a lot about Jupiter in Aries already, but now Mars entered Aries and now they're conjunct as well. So we're going to have a we're going to have a lot of fire energy, fired up people, fired up energy. People are going to, well, if I'm being really honest with you, people are going to want to fight. And but fighting always isn't a bad thing, guys. Like we said, right now we talked about boundaries and those narcissists. It's a good time if you are in a situation right now. The one of the reasons we even shared this part is I'm in a situation like that, and like I'm literally using this Mars in Aries, Mars conjunct Jupiter, to put up those boundaries and really be in a firm place with all of this, and it's helping. The fiery side comes out, the soldier, the warrior of the Mars and Aries comes out. So you can use this. Please use this in a proper way. So what I mean by proper way is, using it for ambition, using it for taking action, for initiating things, initiating new things. Yes, on a global scale, global sphere. Now maybe the troubles come in of, okay, we will have an increase of conflict, we will have an increase in violence, we will have an increase in fires. Unfortunately, I do see this happening more like, nature fires, forest fires, physical injuries, unfortunately, more cuts as well to the body. But again, the cutting off side of Mars can be used. If you have somebody, I think Donnie really speaks a lot about this, and I've jumped on the bandwagon with this as well, because it's really good energy. If you need to cut off something or someone from your life as well, you have more courage, you have more balls to do it, actually. Let's put it that way. And a couple of manifestations I wanted to add to this are more desire for fitness, exercise, movement, generally like moving the body, taking action with the body. Obviously, if you have something, stopping you a little bit in the natal chart, you can feel it a little less, but the energy should be moving inside of you, and you want to put it out there as well, and you have the courage to do it. A lot of sexual energy, raw sexual energy. I would say, again, it has to be channeled correctly. Some things, other things, can take courageous action towards future plans that you actually desire, want. Ambition rises for the future goals. More conflict with foreigners, unfortunately, can happen. Men and masculine type women, you will receive, I would say, more of a boost. We can say luck and energy as well. Now, I want to say about independence. Independence is important. The desire for independence, being more independent in all areas of life, usually comes with this energy as well. But it can lead to, if you don't, because Jupiter expands everything so much, please be careful with the fact of selfishness, basically, is what I'm saying. Don't be selfish. Be independent, but don't be selfish. More boldness. Can mean physical, verbal fights, verbal aggression, and I think Donnie already mentioned this before or in the video beginning. It's like almost this kind of feeling of, I've had enough of this shit, and now I'm taking an action. I'm taking some courageous action towards the actual thing that I want and how the thing should be in my life. So this is very much, I would say also, I want to say it's a very kind of like inspiring type of energy as well, to take physical, material action, courageous action in your life. I think that's what I wanted to say about this.
Great. Because if I think about Mars and Jupiter in Aries, Mars is definitely the more stronger planet in its home sign. And this can really give rise to enthusiastic action, which often imbues what we do, and also it also enhances our possibility of success. And because Aries is really like, I think in tarot is the which tarot card talks about Aries? Is it the Fool or the Chariot?
This is where you are, I think. I'm
yeah,
not
maybe you
super
can
tarot.
put inside the I know it's something to do with movement, and it can be very because of course, in Aries, it really gives us the outlook of, like a baby, like a child, even if you fall down, you just stand right back up and just keep going. And so it's that kind of gusto and bravado energy and a lot of like courage to do things. And with that, it also helps in being confident in our ability to be to effectively exert ourselves. And this can be because we have that self-belief and self-esteem and self-confidence in our competence, in what we are trying to do. But however, I need to point out that this can also be our downfall and lead to failure because of overestimation of our energy and abilities, or there's a misestimation of circumstances. You may also tend to overdo stuff or something, or go too far with things. I've seen over here in Singapore, there's actually this thing called the coffee shops, and that like or hawker centers or food courts, and there's a disproportionate increase in news of, we call them uncles or middle-aged men. Their chest so puffed, and they're like, so like, you know what I mean? And they like start fighting and throwing chairs, and I was like, okay, that's when I know on a personal level that, Mars and Jupiter energy is really building. And it's also to engage in destructive excess. But however, it also gives you that ability to really negotiate for what you want with a very assertive kind of manner. And you also find that Mars and Jupiter together, there'll be this kind of active and assertive reaching out to others in generous and exuberant fashion. It's a fire sign, and it's also continuing to enlarge our viewpoint and understanding as a means of learning from conflicts, because Jupiter is the greater teacher. And Mars in Aries is via conflicts, you learn the higher wisdom. Hopefully, if you can harness this energy properly, it can also overcome your own destructive impulses. But I know with so much fire, it's hard to. But thank God Venus officially exited Aries into Taurus. So this can be like a cushion or landing pad to kind of counteract that, Mars and Jupiter in Aries. Just look out for righteous action, that you're not going into the territory of bulldozing others or becoming like a blatant bully. People may be fighting more for their beliefs, and also over zealousness and fanaticism. I guess if you just search for a clip of, outside the courtroom, when Johnny Depp went into court, how people reacted versus, misheard. It's almost like this. When it's in Aries, I need to mention that our sensitivity chip and capacity for compassion and understanding from the other end of the spectrum may be missing. We may be just very self-focused and directed in our way of putting out how we see things. Because the thing is that it's hard to see the deeper sides of the matter when there's like so charged up is Aries energy, and there's so and it's so much to, and it's because Aries is like the I am principle, and there's so much acting forth energy that you may act before you think things through. So I would say that really wait a minute, hold back, and just kind of let things at least process for 5 to 10 seconds before you actually act out some stuff.
For the people who, because I haven't followed the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing at all. I just wanted nothing to do with it. But for the people who haven't seen it, can you paint us a picture? What happened? When they entered the courtrooms and the things. What happened? Were they applauding, or what was going on there?
well, basically, in short, it's a stark difference, you know. And people are like literally like, you can see the Mars and Jupiter in Aries energy building throughout throughout May, even though Mars is still technically after its when it's still in Pisces, but I do see like it's approaching to hit Jupiter already. So you can really see like people are like riling up and it's literally blown out of proportion, like people hurling insults, not at Johnny Depp, but at the other one. And then you can see people are just like going crazy outside the courtroom. And since that court case is televised all over the place, because it's Virginia where they fought the case, and that's, you know, Virginia basically is one of those rare places whereby the court case can be televised. And you can see people just go crazy. You know, and not to mention that Aries is also a sign that's linked to laughing. So that's why there's a lot of memes. You know, you can search TikTok or YouTube, whatever, Twitter, every place, and there's a lot of like mocking. No, she's wrong. No, he's right. You know, there's this kind of like taking sides because in Aries it's very black and white energy. And so it's like people are like so charged up that a balanced viewpoint here is that both parties need to move on and heal, which I find is really important to acknowledge. It's not like he's right, she's wrong, and blah, 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 blah. They just go off on a tangent, which is like uncalled for because I need to mention here that she has also received threats, which are about unaliving her daughter, which I find that is way beyond the what people should be doing. But then with the Aries energy, people just can't hold it in. So I just want to mention that from the healthiest to the unhealthiest, I've seen the whole spectrum going on.
Guys, this is crazy. You know, if you're one of them, please don't do that. You know,
Yeah.
This is their relationship business. Yeah, she was wrong into, you know, going into places, but you know, her daughter didn't do anything.
And I think one thing is that people are also mocking her lawyers, in which I pity her lawyers as well because they are only signing up to do a job. And they are like not meant to be thrown all over the place, and you know, like just, you know, because Mars and Jupiter in Aries can become like a bullying energy to make someone the topic of mockery. So they can be, you know, going too far. That's why I mentioned Mars and Jupiter is to really to go too far and overdo something, and to engage in destructive excess. All those things I see playing out. Yeah. So do you have anything more to add before we move on to the main events for June?
I think that's. I think we gave enough for this segment, guys. Yeah. If you want even more, look at our previous month's video. There's more.
Oh, by the way, Jupiter rules courts. Yeah. So that's why it is what. Yeah, it is what it is.
more fighting in courts, definitely more aggression in courts.
A spectacle. Yeah. Laughable, Aries. Laughable. Yeah.
Are we doing Saturn retrograde now?
Oh yeah, sure. Saturn right off the gate when June starts. Yeah. So do you want to start, or shall I just like go on with it? Okay, so when we talk about Saturn retrograde, for this particular one, it's about making major karmic choices. And I'll go on to explain why. But first and foremost, I'll just like to paint for you like the dates. So Saturn retrograde actually starts on June 4th and lasts all the way till October 22nd of this year, so just before Halloween. And Saturn actually entered pre-retrograde shadow. And this actually happened on end of February on the 26th of this year at 18 degrees, 35 minutes of Aquarius. And Saturn goes retrograde, like I mentioned, it starts on June 4th. And it will happen at 25 degrees, 15 minutes of Aquarius. And Saturn will actually move backwards to 18 degrees, 35 minutes on 22nd of October. That's when Saturn's stationed to go direct. And Saturn will officially clear the post-retrograde shadow, and that will happen in the third week of January, January 23rd of next year, at 25 degrees, 15 minutes of Aquarius. So when I actually think about this Saturn retrograde this year, in a sign of Aquarius, it's really nudging us or urging us to make major karmic choices that will affect our lives for many years to come, because it happens in the futuristic, hopes and dreams related sign of Aquarius. And during this time, we'll actually be assessing all commitments and navigating the new direction that we wish to take, or hope to take, that is. So over this retrograde period, you may be over the June to October period to slow down and examine your projects and any undertakings rather than starting anything totally brand new. And anything in life which you may be feeling dissatisfied with should be re-examined. For Saturn can actually teach you where you have been previously failing, for that matter. And it's also time for us to think deeply about our future and what energy we want to keep in our lives. Because not forgetting that later this year, Saturn will be in a 1 to 2 degree orb to square Uranus. So it's that pivoting energy. When I think about Saturn-Uranus square, it's that pivoting energy, particularly when it's a closing square or waning square. That means you are preparing for a new cycle to come. And but I just want to mention that although when we talk about Saturn retrograde, this isn't a horrible time to commit. In fact, it's a great time to decide who and what you want to invest your energy and time in, because Saturn rules time, in order to benefit you for a long time to come, Aquarius. I also need to mention that relationships can thrive and grow during this transit if you're able and willing to put in the grinding work, because Saturn is the grind of things. But I need to say here that this isn't a transit that will benefit slackers. In fact, it will put everyone to work. In terms of career growth, this is a moment that urges us all to boss up and elevate our professional status and gain, because that's what Aquarius is about. Even if we decide to transition to a new position of career, we are moving towards our goal. And I'd just like to briefly cover Saturn retrograde key aspects for 2022. So after Saturn retrograde on June 16, Sun and Saturn retrograde actually harmonize via a trine. This can actually make us boss up and take control for our lives. It also talks about the slow but sure attainment of goals through hard work. Okay, so this is June 16. 2 days later, on June 18, Venus in Taurus actually forms a square with Saturn retrograde. And this can actually make us rethink and re-evaluate our financial decisions. Some of us may also develop a spiritual pursuit or interest as well, for that matter. And any relationships that we start will have a very mature flavor to things, because we're talking about Venus and Saturn in a square. So let's move on to June 27. Mars and Saturn retrograde will form a sextile on that day. And this can really add some power and authority behind our actions. And let's jump forward to July 2nd, because Mercury in Gemini forms a trine with Saturn retrograde. And so this can create structure in the way that we express ourselves, helping us make decisions. And it could be something that happened prior to this Saturn retrograde that you've been deciding on. Maybe on July 2nd, something just kind of, you're going to move ahead with certain decisions. And end of July, on the 31st, Mercury in Leo forms an opposition with Saturn retrograde. This can be like a, I can hear you, but I don't understand kind of energy because of the opposition. We are talking about Leo and Aquarius energy. So this can be kind of like, there'll be more misunderstandings going on. And you got to be even more careful regarding your choice of words, because people can be pretty sensitive and be ticked off more easily. And on July 7, we've got Mars in Taurus square Saturn retrograde. And this can be a few days where egos can collide. So you need to be careful and organized when you act, for that matter. So skipping forward to August 14, the Sun in Leo forms an opposition with Saturn retrograde. And this can be making us less confident and sure about ourselves. So if you can, middle of August, if you need to take a small little few day break, please do, when Saturn retrograde opposes the Sun. So now let's move on to most of October, because this is when Saturn retrograde and Uranus retrograde will be squaring each other roughly a degree or two apart. Not exactly an exact aspect, but still pretty tight. And this really reminds us of the culminating supply chain disruption related events. Maybe in October, some of you may be wanting to pivot to another career direction, something of that matter, or make some very important long-term decisions, which is Saturn, to kind of anchor the future that you want for yourself. In reality, Taurus. And in terms of mundane astrology for October, when that square is pretty tight, this can actually send inflationary pressures even higher. But then this can also represent the last window of pressure in accessing all your commitments and navigating the new direction that you wish to take, to pivot your direction for the long haul. So now let's move on to October 11. Sun in Leo actually forms, no, wait, sorry. Let's move on to October 13. Let's skip October 11. Venus in Libra actually forms a trine with Saturn, and this can bring us closer to commitments. Maybe some of us are chasing that, someone that we've been fancying for the longest time. And when this Venus in Libra trine Saturn, why not call that person out, for a date? Maybe something longer term may result, because I quite like this this trine from Venus to Saturn. And then last but not least, 8 days after, when Venus in Libra trines Saturn retrograde, Saturn will station direct. So I would just like to briefly touch on in terms of signs. So I classify into 3 clusters: the fixed signs, the cardinal signs, and also the mutable signs. So let's talk about the fixed signs: Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. So this Saturn retrograde will happen in their angular houses, 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th. And so you'll be feeling this Saturn retrograde the most. It's just telling me that these 4 signs, particularly if your ascendant is there, or midheaven, Sun and Moon to a lesser extent, that you have to take your lives more seriously than others and make the necessary shifts according to what or where you see your future to be. And let's talk about the cardinal signs: Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. This will be happening in their fixed houses or succeeding houses, 2nd, 5th, 8th, and 11th. And so you'll be feeling this Saturn retrograde in terms of a social and a financial level. This transit for the cardinal signs won't be as harsh if I were to compare against the fixed signs, but it will make the cardinal signs rethink how they process and deal with relationships while finding their confidence and self-worth and esteem. So lastly, let's talk about the mutable signs: Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. This Saturn retrograde will happen in your mutable houses, which are houses 3rd, 6th, 9th, and 12th. I would say not as impacted or affected as other signs previously mentioned. Mostly a time of reflection, I guess, and also implementing structure into the lives of the mutable signs. That's what I actually see for you guys. So do you have anything to add?
I do. I will add, but I think you did an awesome job already. Now, Donnie mentioned the degrees already for you guys. I want to mention, for me, I think the fixed signs are going to get the bulk of it in this retrograde. Unfortunately, guys, having some fixed in my prominent three, let's say, I know how hard you will be hit by this, and especially unfortunately those of you who have those influences in the fixed degree, in the fixed signs. I put a 2-degree orb here, 27 to 16. When you have something there, fixed signs, you will feel it the most. Even more so 25, 18. You will have it even stronger, and you will feel it twice as well, because Saturn will come over you again. So there are going to be those Saturn hardships there. Lots of duties, lots of work. Depending on the planet, it depends a little bit. Now, for me, I want to also mention the actual kind of, for me, the Saturn retrograde is underrated. I think it's one of the really important retrogrades because it really talks about physical material manifestation. Now, why do I say that? Because when we're heading into the retrograde, and some of the manifestations have already started to come, more regulations, interest rates, that will start to, we will almost forget about, some of the regulations we will forget about some of the duties. But the problem with this is that we actually need to put in effort. So in our personal lives, how can this manifest? Saturn goes right now, we're really focused, we're putting in efforts, we're making things happen. Now Saturn goes retrograde. Maybe I don't want to do it. Oh, I can do it later. You're just kind of postponing. What I've seen, people start to postpone things a lot, and they don't want to put the actual effort, the work required into the thing, or where the retrograde is happening in your house. Remember, guys, wherever house it is happening, the more those manifestations will happen in that area of your life. Now, why do I want to mention this is, it's easy, especially if we're talking about, a lot of people in Europe. The summertime, very often in Canada, United States, everywhere, it's kind of like a, vacation time. Again, want to postpone these duties, responsibilities. I don't want to deal with these things. But for me, it's also important to keep in mind what the hell is awaiting us in autumn time. And guys, not to scare you too much, but this is the autumn. I would say me and Donnie, probably other astrologers you listen to, have been kind of like preparing you for. It's not going to be easy there. And the results of what you're going to do right now, especially personally, I will touch upon the global manifestations as well, but especially personally, if you manage to put in the efforts, if you manage to still fill your duties, of course, take breaks and stuff like that, but keep working day to day, keep working on your goals, keep working on your dreams, keep putting the efforts in. If it's networks, if it's friends, put efforts into your relationships as well. Needs to happen, otherwise they can just drift off, and you will have to face the music during autumn time. And with Saturn, like maybe with Mercury or something, Venus, maybe you can a little bit take it easier, I would say. But with Saturn, like the music will be harsh. It will be harsh. You will have to do more during autumn time. The duties will be overwhelming. There will be so much there. But if you put in the efforts right now, during Saturn retrograde, you will get the actual physical manifestation. You will make something, or you will complete something that is tangible and material of value. It's very important for you to understand, because during a retrograde, all those positive natures of Saturn, or qualities of Saturn, it's harder to channel and use those things. You have to keep that in mind. So yeah, keep in mind all the things that are happening in our society, in our economies, with the prices, with regulations, And this retrograde period, it seems like, oh, maybe, not so bad, or you almost like forget about, I have to wear the mask, and everything of that nature can lift away. Some of the regulations, you can travel now, you don't have to have the V for a moment, but everything during the autumn will, hit you in the face if you're not prepared, basically, is what I'm saying. And let's talk a little bit about, kind of like rapid fire that I like to do here. Constant efforts into long-term goals. Friendships, social networks need more work. Pre-shadow, it is because Aquarius is a lot to do with bonuses and receiving bonuses, material gains. Pre-shadow right now we're in or during there, even when we're hitting the retrograde, you can receive a bonus. You can receive a result for the efforts that you have put in right now using Saturn before the retrograde. But if you didn't do the work, with Saturn, you're not going to. Basically, I'm going to be very direct with you. You're not going to get much. You're going to get maybe more work or more duties. Yeah, so a bonus is possible if you have put in the work. Now, restrictions I mentioned, they can lift with the V situation. I know with the W situation, most of people have already forgot about the V situation, but the V situation is alive and ticking and well, and I'm going to discuss it in my full moon coverage as well, because we have some developments there, unfortunately. Okay, but let's focus on this. Tendency to put things behind, or kind of like almost be okay with them taking longer. So what I mean by that, maybe you have a project, you need to focus on it, you need to work on it, but putting it on some back burner, I'll do it later. There is a tendency to start doing that. Regulations. Now, as we're leading up to the period, we already heard about interest rates, and this is one of the things I actually want to share my screen for just a little tiny bit. And we're going to talk about data and astrology in a really quick, rapid fire way. So what I'm doing right now behind the scenes, and this is going to be released most likely after the Mercury retrograde is done, but I've put in some interesting data with astrology, and this is the Fed, the governing organ in the United States that controls the interest rates. And you can see on this graph of mine, upside is basically interest rates going higher, meaning lending becoming expensive. If you have loans, mortgages, you have to pay more for these. And remember, guys, whenever the Fed does something, usually the ECB, the European Central Bank, they start to do things, and other people start to do things. So Fed is kind of like the way shore, usually. So what we're seeing is a hike here, 2022, and it's important to understand one of the biggest reasons, and I will reveal it in the full product. But one of the biggest thing here that we're seeing is the South Node and the North Node. And when the North Node is in Taurus, and when the South Node is in Scorpio, we are seeing interest rate hikes. Remember that, and remember, guys, how long North Node is going to be in Taurus and South Node is going to be in Scorpio. So right now, what is coming. So don't let it hit you in the face. Be prepared, and Godspeed with that, making those decisions, basically. Now, what did I want to say about this? So the regulations happening right now, we are seeing those, and again, during the retrograde itself, guys, what is happening, what I've experienced, I will give you the mic in a second, Tony, but what I've experienced is it's almost like during the retrograde, these regulations are prepared. These things are worked on behind the scenes. It's like nobody knows what is happening, and then boom, the retrograde ends, and it's like hitting news after news after new regulation, or interest rates higher. And I just wanted to kind of warn you with these matters. That there's a very big potential. News is already out that that they're raising them. They might even do it even more, considering everything. You saw the hike, guys. You saw the hike on the graph. It's quite insane. It doesn't look healthy at all. And supply line problems. Again, we're talking about things right now that are happening. But during the retrograde, we can even forget about these things. During the summer, more food has been grown. For a moment, the supply is there. But again, come autumn, problems, Uranus and Saturn again in a square. So don't allow yourself to be fooled right now during this period into that everything is fine. Oh, everything is returning back to normal. I will tell you right now, I'm looking at so much astrology. There is no normal. There's no freaking normal in it. No freaking way. It's not possible. Okay, I mentioned these. What? Mentioned the. Just want to get everything. Okay, I'll let you, Donnie. You wanted to say something? I'll look.
Oh yeah, I mean the thing is that piggybacking on the interest rate thing that you've just mentioned regarding the graph, this actually ties into this picture that we are getting for probably the first 2 to 3 weeks of June, and that's because there's an extended square between Mercury and Saturn. One is stationing to go direct, one is stationing to go retrograde. And they are within like that 1 to 2 degrees square for most of June. And this can be like a lot of things being set in place to actually raise the interest rate collectively. Because since the South Node is in the sign of borrowing from another, which is Scorpio, yeah, this is not looking too good. But I think we can use this June period to really analyze what we want, what we don't want in our lives, and just trim our spending accordingly. Because I feel that over this current Mercury retrograde that's been tumultuous since last month, I guess we are all like in some way, shape or form being pushed out of our comfort zones and needing to do something about things. And this extended square of Mercury stationing direct, I think it happens on the 3rd of June. And less than 24 hours later, Saturn was stationed to go retrograde. But that is while Mercury is also making an I call it enchanting aspect, which is that sextile to Neptune. With Mercury also forming a trine to Pluto as well. So a lot of things going on pertaining to all these things, which I'll get on to talk about what this can mean. But let's talk about that square first between Saturn and Mercury within the first week of the month. We just need to be more disciplined and really envisioned what we can live without right now in order to benefit later on in life. So maybe like what Ian mentioned about taking that holiday, spending that money, traveling in Europe or other continents, because it is very tempting to go and have fun and all that. But if you spend that X amount of money in that time span, this means that you have less when autumn and winter hits in Europe, and also the Americas later in the year. And so it's about having that economy of how to stretch your dollar a bit further, rather than just kind of like be on a happy-go-lucky spending spree. Although it's very tempting with that Mercury sextile sextile Neptune, we may be in this like little trance of our own. But when I think about Mercury aspecting Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto concurrently, when Mercury stations direct, this can be also a very inspirational time to kind of think, to have that vision of what kind of life you want for yourself for the future. And that's on a collective level, because Neptune and Pluto are transpersonal planets. And I'd just like to mention also that we probably have heard of monkeypox. That's been coming up a lot for the past few weeks at least. I think it actually happened when Mercury was going to station to go retrograde. And by the way, monkey is Gemini and Mercury. And pox, the word itself, pox, is linked to Jupiter and Neptune. And because the way the pox appear is usually related to the sign of Aries, because the bump actually comes out. It's very like inflammatory in terms of the body's response. And so you can see how this Mercury retrograde tied to Neptune right now is Jupiter. And then we've got all this news from established news and social media platforms. That's very much about Saturn in Aquarius energy. That's going to form a square with that Mercury. Not to mention that there may be explosive paranoia in the form of news. And this will actually perpetuate, I would say, confidently that until Mercury clears its last sextile with Jupiter, then it may just kind of die down a little bit. But that means what I'm trying to say is that for the first half of June, we may be hearing a lot of like hype and spin pertaining to such things. So I would say this coincidence is uncanny, but you know, as above, so below. What I want to also mention that there's something regarding delusion that's tied to that Mercury and Neptune sextile when Mercury stations direct. But then Mercury also at the same time trines Pluto in Capricorn. And Mercury will be sextiling Jupiter for the last time before it clears its shadow degrees. What this is telling me is that we can't be too delusional to go back to thinking that these inflationary pressures, which are linked to Jupiter and Neptune, as transitionary. That means elevated prices are here to stay. And that's in the background of that everything bubble situation that we've been experiencing since last year. And not to mention that global supply chain issue or disruption at hand, it will just keep perpetuating itself because of whatever else is going on in the world. So it's really telling us a more basic, self-sustainable, and perhaps we need to also develop more creative ways of stretching our resources or dollars further. And with that, there may be like a fundamental shift or change in our value system and spending patterns as one of the few ways out of combating all these pressures. And if you reflect upon your past involving anything that you're doing extravagantly or splurging to look rich, there is perhaps a permanent end to that. Unless, of course, you find yourself a sugar parent, then there's a whole other issue. Hopefully, we have used this particular testing and sobering Mercury retrograde, that we are still in it until early June, to confront our previous level of attachment to money, to material possessions, and how that ties it into our self-worth and esteem issues. Doesn't mean that we need a lot of money to move forward and live. I'll leave that to the audience to think about it. And one thing, Saturn in Aquarius, squaring that Mercury for extended period of time is also about the launching of that CBDC system, digital currency as well. And hard questions such as, do you want to be in this system or screw that, comes to mind. And if you're not about being inside the system, then some key fundamental reality-driven questions, which is that Mercury in late Taurus squaring that Saturn in Aquarius comes forth. And you may be taking the next few weeks to kind of ponder upon things. Do you want to be in it, so the big brother's always watching you? Or do you want a way out of this? To set up your alternative reality, Saturn in Aquarius. And since Saturn in Aquarius can literally mean support structures in the form of communities, I have also recently seen that people coming together to do bulk buying for essentials. And it's done through apps or third-party software. Because when they pool orders together, they can enjoy larger discounts or economies of scale, that is, or there's a larger bargaining power. And that's also linked to that Mercury and Saturn extended square. And I've also seen barter trading as well happening between people. You give me a haircut, I shall give you XYZ, such things as such. And I also see more socially conscious and driven enterprises popping up as well over this period of time. I've seen some very promising social enterprise that came up over the past month. I think it's something to do with this as well. And I just want to mention here that since we've been talking about mundane level things, Mercury will also conjunct the fixed star Algol, which is that Medusa energy, as Mercury stations direct. And when that Mercury on Algol squares Saturn, which is going to turn retrograde, over the next week, we may hear some kind of sad news, indeed for some, because Saturn can mean something depressing. This can also be the continuation of countries defaulting on their financial debt agreements from the macroeconomics of things and needing to ask the IMF for help. And this very much ties in Mercury with like Neptune, Pluto, and also Saturn in this case. And when that Mercury moves out of its shadow degrees, forming that last sextile to Jupiter, there may be even more news pertaining to that coming out. So people need to look out for that. And so what I'm trying to say is that the list of countries that's one by one going bankrupt may grow longer and longer from this point onwards. And not to mention that I have looked into Johnny Depp's chart. And do you know that Johnny Depp has got late degree Aquarius Saturn as well? And his Mercury is also on Algol. So what I'm trying to say is that this extended Mercury Saturn square is exactly as reflected in Johnny Depp's chart. So what this is implying to me is that probably around June 2nd or 3rd, for people who are looking at when the jury will have their verdict, I would expect around June 2nd or 3rd. That means towards the end of next week, okay? And also be on the alert and don't fall for baits from organized crimes and scams over the first half of June because of Mercury's aspects to Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto. And Mercury Saturn is all about new censorship as well. So you may want to take note of any more of this kind of shenanigans coming out regarding social media censorship. And last but not least, when we talk about Mercury tied to Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto, this can mean that our mind, our thinking patterns, our intellect, our speech, writing, communication, personal connections is also Mercury, will be engaging in matters pertaining to passionate and empowered spiritual practices that may also come forth. Systematic and disciplined inner transformation may also take place in the first half of June, I would say. There will also be a breakdown of previous certainties leading to a more open and connected way of being. This is one of the more important things I want to mention. Profound suffering, at least initially, followed by a blessed sense of peace that comes forth in the end. But if you're not handling this Mercury station direct squaring Saturn energy properly, while Mercury is also aspecting Neptune and Pluto, this can be a rough month in the sense that there can be like a spiraling sense of deflation and loss, broken or destroyed connections. So relationships might take a beat, but it can be pertaining to those people that already need to leave your life anyways. When the Mercury retrograde started, now you're just kind of rethinking whether to break the bonds with them. There may also be grievous feelings of anguish and torment without the full surrender needed to release their emotions, which may occur. And last but not least, there may be like an increase in dogmatic and rigid spiritual dualisms because of that Pisces and Mercury energy. And last but not least, there can be extreme renunciation of the material world. And this can be linked to the list of countries going bankrupt one by one, more and more. And we will be having news of that more and more as well. Do you have anything more to add before we skip to the next retrograde?
A tiny bit, and it's a little bit about self-promotion as well. And I do like what you said about the countries, especially guys right now when they're raising interest rates, they're raising them, the spike is high, but the interest rate itself is, quite small. I mean, the spike of the percentage of how much they raised. And even this is putting tremendous amounts of pressure on a lot of, not only, countries, but a lot of companies, a lot of financial economic entities. Imagine, now they're talking about, 2%, 3%. Imagine what that will bring. It's not looking too good right now, and the bulk or the ugliness, the real shit will hit the fan during autumn time this year, and prepare yourself accordingly. I would suggest revisiting all of your financial obligations, duties that you have. Do they have fixed rates? If not, can you negotiate fixed interest rates? Otherwise, just very, very practically, your payments will rise. You need to be prepared for it. And, follow me. Obviously follow Donnie as well, but follow me on social media, because I will be publishing and releasing that interest rate product as well. So, and I think one thing about Saturn retrograde still, it's like a project also can return. I really want you to understand, project can return. Now Mercury, both Saturn retrograde, and this is the time also given to you. It's like, kind of like, oh, I don't want to do it. Oh, there's so many duties. Evaluate if it's the right thing, and then really need to put in the efforts during the retrograde. I think that's it.
So now let's move on to Neptune retrograde, which will come end of June actually. So this Neptune retrograde, if I were to sum it up, this can be talking about seeking truth through psychic perception and emotional sensitivities, because it happens in a sign of Pisces, where Neptune is for the longest time. I can't wait for Neptune to change sign, honestly. So Neptune will actually go retrograde officially on 28th of June, and this will be continuing to December 3rd of this year. So Neptune has already entered pre-retrograde zone on March 7th of this year at 22 degrees 39 minutes of Pisces. And when it turns retrograde on June 28th of this year, it will be at 25 degrees 27 minutes of Pisces. And it goes back to 22 degrees 39 minutes. And it will station direct on December 3rd of this year. When Neptune actually leaves its post-retrograde shadow, this will happen on March 24th of next year, 2023. And if I were to look at Neptune retrograde in terms of its meaning, because Neptune, when we talk about Neptune, is the planet of delusion and also illusion. And I always think about Neptune as being the moonwalker through the sky. It doesn't actually rotate, it floats, literally. And it's also about psychic perception, emotional sensitivities, particularly hypersensitivity can be linked to, or allergies as well can be linked to Neptune. So we may actually question our intuition and second guess our hunches as well. For that matter, when Neptune goes retrograde more, but that's unless you've got a very prominent natal Neptune, or this degrees of 22 degrees 39 minutes all the way to 25 degrees 27 minutes of Pisces is directly in the line of fire for your natal chart. Then you may need to take note of that. But however, I would say that this retrograde period is almost like we are all being prepared to swim in the deep end of the ocean for the next 6 months to come. And because Neptune is the higher octave of Venus, so it's also about letting our heart navigate through the murky waters ahead and believe in the divine. Because Neptune, I actually associate it with divine love, because its lower octave Venus actually exalts in the sign of Pisces, the natural domain of Neptune. So I would say that stay true to your feelings and also trust your gut over the next 6 months. Although it may be challenging, follow your instincts, because they can serve as the main way that you can reach your truth, or towards the truth at least. So in terms of key Neptune retrograde aspects, in 2022, July 2nd, we've got Mercury in Gemini squaring Neptune retrograde. This can be a time frame where we may believe in lies rather than the truth. It's much easier for us to get duped. This can be that we don't want to acknowledge the reality of situations, perhaps around this time in early July. And this can lead us to also fall easier for scams as well. So take note of this. Because the thing is that what other people tell us can be also misleading us with that Neptune square. And so we must be careful with the information we receive over this period in beginning of July, particularly July 2nd. So if we skip forward to July 14, Venus in Gemini forms a square with Neptune retrograde. And so matters of the heart can become more confusing. Where do I stand in this relationship? It's not a great day also to make financial investments because Venus rules money. And just if you can, those few days, kind of hold off your financial decisions until this square dissipates. It'll be the best. Otherwise, it can be backfiring on you because of the uncertainty of Neptune's moonwalk backwards. So when we go forward to September 16, the Sun in Virgo actually forms an opposition with retrograde Neptune. We may feel kind of disillusioned or even confused with our place in the world, represented by the Sun, until we actually find like a core grounding or foundation that stabilizes us. This can be like very murky waters that we are walking through. And when we skip forward to October 12th, Mars in Gemini will form a square with Neptune retrograde twice. Because Mars actually stationed retrograde in late Gemini. And so that first and second square with retrograde Neptune will be back to back. And the first,
One thing about that, because that's a really annoying aspect, I would say be really prepared for those judgments, things being said about you coming your way in a nasty way, almost like in a blind way coming from the other side. It can be just outrageous accusations towards you, so you need to be prepared there.
Yeah, and the first occurrence of this square will be on October 12th of 2022, and the second one will be on November 19th. So it's an extended I would say within Oort square. So October and November will be like murky waters, because Mars in Gemini squaring Neptune retrograde, it's going to be representing moments of uncertainty and ambiguity. It's almost like we are walking in quicksand. Every step forward feels like a giant leap backwards. It's almost like this kind of defeating kind of energy, which can be quite disheartening. Or it can be that fear can hold us back from attaining our goals, which is why it's not the best time to push matters forward when we talk about October to November period. But this can be a period in October to November actually to strategize the moment when there is more flexibility and movement as well. So as we skip forward to December 1st, Mercury in Sagittarius forms a square with Neptune retrograde. And so the sign Sagittarius and Pisces will be highlighted here. So two very different energies, but they are both Jupiter ruled, by the way. So on one hand, this can make us super sensitive and emotional when it comes to criticisms from others. But on the other hand, this can make us too focused on ourselves that we don't even notice. Others are poking fun at us. So therefore, it's important to relax and take a break from social media. I hope all of us do that. I always take a tech detox break. It helps with your mental health. And it helps with like relaxing the mind and heart in order not to cause even more stress and anxiety in your system. So if we talk about Neptune retrograde 2022 effects, I would say that the mutable signs are the ones that feel it the most, because the signs Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces will be the ones that are in the direct line of fire, I would say, because this Neptune retrograde happens in their angular or pivotal houses, which are the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th. And maybe there's this kind of major existential crisis and even meltdowns as well. Or maybe there's this kind of divine discontent, which is Neptune as well, around the direction that they wish to take in the future. It becomes like this muddy or murky waters. And adding on that square from Mars 3 times in the process, this can be a massive like ego wipeout period for them. And let's talk about the fixed signs, which are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. This Neptune retrograde happens in their fixed houses or succedent houses, 2nd, 5th, 8th, and 11th. So they won't be feeling as rough as permutable signs, but they'll be evaluating the financial and creative direction that they want to take for themselves. And lastly, cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. This Neptune retrograde will be happening in their mutable or cadent houses, 3rd, 6th, 9th, and 12th. This can be a time where they may be lost in their dreams. But however, it's a good thing because it will actually inspire them to attain their innermost dreams and visions. I would say that. So do you have anything more to add?
I have a few things about Neptune retrograde. I'm maybe a little bit of a less of a follower of Neptune retrograde. Obviously, I follow it a tiny bit. It's not in my immediate surroundings constantly. Couple of things to say about this in my mind. Now we're leading up to the retrograde, so we're recording this in approximately month, a little bit less than a month before that. So the manifestations that are with the retrograde are going to be getting, it's like almost like building up. The energy is building up and it's getting stronger. So be on the lookout for things that Donnie already said. But a couple of things. News and things regarding the V situation right now are going to come out. Something to do with the medicine, something to do with the actual V can come out. They're going to say something about it. Um, the good thing here is maybe a pill, maybe something that is more healing of nature. Oh, not a new V. But be on the lookout for these types of developments, because as we're building up to the retrograde, developments get stronger, and during the retrograde they're weaker, and then after, like Donnie said, in December again similar news, because it's happening in the
Oh
sign
yeah,
of
I
Pisces.
forgot. Gemini and the planet Mercury talks about monkeys. So what I just mentioned earlier, just look out for that. Yeah.
That will, I will mention it in my full moon thing as well, but I think we're already tiptoeing around it. So personal lives, definitely we will be. Also, guys, look at where Pisces is. This is also some of the areas where the themes that we're talking about with Donnie are going to come out. So if we're talking about, let's say, manipulation, veil pulled over you, bullshitting ourselves, others bullshitting us, wherever Neptune right now is transiting in your natal chart, this is where those things are going to come out. So for example, 7th house Neptune transit, maybe your partners are bullshitting, or maybe you're bullshitting your partners, or maybe there's something sketchy happening there. And this is now, you're going to see some of these manifestations, illusions that you might have had about other people. You might have had, maybe 6th house, you've had about a routine. You've had about your idea of how you eat or diet. These will be revealed. You will see more clearly about these matters. With Neptune, I'm always like, or like the screws will be turned even stronger. God damn it, it's Neptune. So yeah, be on the lookout for how you are bullshitting yourselves, and be on the lookout how others might be behind the scenes bullshitting yourself, you as well. It can go both ways, unfortunately. So. Not good. Positive side, obviously, spiritual healing, healing in general, especially now leading up to a retrograde, can happen. And I think that's it for me for the Neptune retrograde. Are we going to the lunations, I think, now?
Oh yes, I think we are having that, well, we call it the strawberry super full moon. So this is a potent full moon because it's closer to the Earth.
Guys, I will share my screen as well. Let's do that. Because I think people need to know it's not the right one yet. This one is. So, guys, let's dig into this super full moon. I think this is one I go first, and Donnie will follow as well. And at first glance, let's discuss the influences that are in our grasp here. So the full moon itself is happening in Sagittarius, the sign of Sagittarius, which is quite a pleasant and I would say a pretty good sign to have a full moon in. A lot of signs I prefer to have the full moon less. So we have a good point here. And it's happening on 23 degrees, 25 minutes. Something to be said about the term that it's happening in. By Egyptian terms, it's happening in Saturn terms. It will bring that Saturnian heaviness to the, maybe a little bit of a too optimistic jolliness of the Sagittarius full moon. Now, other influences also in play here. We have a very, very tight T-square with the Neptune. We just ended with Neptune, and we're and Donnie's shaking his head. Obviously, it's when I was looking at this, I was like, kind of, how many T-squares are we going to have during freaking full moons and new moons? But guys, there's no way out of it. We have to deal with it. We have to go towards it. We have to go through it. And let's find our ways out of it and through it. And some other influences that are more supportive in this case, the T-square, maybe so some of you who are new watchers, T-square, how I always experience and I see the T-square is there's a pressure. There's a pressure somewhere, and the pressure is usually happening in these areas and in these areas. When we're looking at, I hope you can see my mouse, I think you can see, and the release is usually at the top. So this case, the Neptune, as confusing as Neptune is at times, it is actually showing us the path, let's say, out of the pressure cooker, out of the uncomfortableness that can come. But I want to just say, with Neptune, always the illusions, the veils, I'm seeing something, I'm looking at something, and I'm putting so many stories on it. I'm putting so much meaning to it that might not be there. So first and foremost, keep that in mind with these T-square. Now, if that's not enough for you guys, we need to go to the full moon itself, the degree. Now, which is a little bit annoying for us, is that the full moon itself is happening on the fixed star Ras al-Hag. Now, the ancients, the more traditional ancients, only put a very, very negative meaning to this fixed star. Now, they have a point. Obviously, I'm not saying they don't have a point, but I want to just explain this a little bit, because the ancients were living at a very, very different time, where murders were killing, everything was happening constantly. So obviously you're going to observe more negative events happening. So this is one of the reasons why they are observing these negative events. Not to discredit them entirely and to say, oh, this Ras al-Hag is amazing and no bad things are going to happen, or negative things. Yes, the negative meaning is under this fixed star, and I'm going to talk about it in a second. But remember, there is now new, let's say, we modern astrologer right now in moment, let's say modern astrologer, we are doing new observations. We are taking new notes in our new societal situation. So I'm calling obviously myself out, I'm calling all other astrologers out, I'm calling you out as a viewer as well, to see if there is only like this negative energy there with this fixed star, and I'm going to discuss it in a second. So has, you know, a little bit of a Saturn type tendencies, more of those, as well connected to Venus and again to Neptune, guys. This is quite a bit of a Neptunian influence we have in our full moon this month. So we're going to be more prone to infections, definitely, to toxins, hallucinatory substances. We're going to be taking these in, you know, we can talk about, you know, snake bites, biting from animals in general. We remember, guys, we also have the Jupiter, Aries, Mars combo happening here. So these types of events, insect bites, animal bites, taking in toxins, inflammations, these are the topic right now with this full moon. And I'm urging you to be more careful. You know, maybe do not do things that you don't desperately need to do. Don't, you know, too much risk in nature right now, especially after the full moon leading up to it. There is a lot of that going on. And when we're talking about also the Ras al-Hag, there's a lot about those Venusian, negative side of Venusian qualities. So what are we meaning about Venusian negative side of qualities? Overindulgence with food, overindulgence with pleasure, overindulgence with all of the five senses type of things. And we can also add like this type of shallowness, this kind of only looks types of things into the list as well. So these are going to be, you know, we're going to be dealing with this. You're going to be seeing it during the full moon, and after the 2 weeks period, definitely you're going to be seeing it outwardly. it's almost like too much of the good side of life, the five senses. I need to have this food, I need to have this drink, I need to have this thing. And I'm going to say this many times during this coverage, but you really need to be careful with this, because it's not only the Russell Hawk, it's also about the Neptune. And now the T-square is happening here. So during a full moon, very often emotional time, still, even if it's happening in a Sagittarius type, let's say a more optimistic sign, still an emotional time. Whenever emotions come up right now for us in a society, usually the first instinct is to do something to feel better. And this is the Neptune right now. Is going to speak really loudly to you during this period. It's going to make it seem that these things that you think about doing, be it alcohol, be it drugs, be it substances, be it these escapism type tactics that you might be using, that these are good and these will liberate you and these will help you and these will help you through this emotional time, full moon emotional time. But the answer, unfortunately, lies in the opposite direction of Neptune. Remember, Neptune is also to do with spiritual healing, it's to do with energy healing, it's to do with healing in general. So I'm going to put this right now into your psyches, into your brains. It's a lot to do, instead of going towards addictions, drugs, those types of areas. And even like, if I'm looking at this, even like psilocybin, mushrooms, things like that, they can seem like a good idea. But with this square, I would be a little bit hesitant. I would be very, very, I wouldn't do it. Let's put it bluntly, because it's too much of this type of energy, and you might have illusions, you might have delusions, and these substances aren't something you should be taking lightly at all with. If we're talking about support here, I want to mention Saturn for a minute, because Saturn for us is in a pleasant sextile, let's put it that way. Although retrograde, there is still, let's say, some juice left in old Saturn there, because it's quite strong, it's quite strong. So sextile does usually help us be somewhat emotionally grounded, almost. And when it's in a sextile like this, I do see also getting like practical financial material results here, because let's say the positive side of Russell Hogg is almost like these getting the financial acumen as well. So with the combination that I have here with Saturn sextile in Aquarius, a very practical or very financially better, economically oriented sign, and having a sign-based, I use sign-based more, sign-based trine from Aries, there is a chance that, if we're working on something practically, financially, towards our goals, towards our projects, there is an opportunity here to have that financial acumen as well. But after you get it, or after receive it, the tendency to go, I'm going all out on the town, I'm going to, have the booze, I'm going to have whatever it is that you're like to have. Don't do that. And use this Saturn to be more emotionally grounded. This will help you. I would say even like your networks, your friendship circles that you can trust, maybe that are more experienced ones, more mature, can help you through this, let's say, emotionally charged time, where the tendency to go towards addictions is extremely, extremely freaking high. So use that, guys, as use this video, use me right now as a kind of like a old person with a beard and saying, don't do it. Use this. Okay, guys, I think I mentioned like the general things. I think I want to mention now the rapid fire that I have for this. Russell Hogg, we talked about Russell Hogg. And I want to mention one side of Russell Hogg as well, because modern astrologers, I'm leaning into there are very few of them can't even remember their names, they have observed Russell Hogg to bring in again more of the attunement to these higher frequencies, higher dimensional energies, healing energies. But when I look at this, it's going to be a pretty difficult task for us, guys, and it is definitely an important route we must take here. But the difficulty is here. So do your best to use the higher side of these influences. So negative side, overindulgence; higher side, a little bit abstinence, and taking on some healing practice, meditation practice, healing thing. Maybe a mentor figure coming and slapping you on the fingers and saying, don't do it. It's a good way to go. Okay, I will now go into the rapid fire that I have about this, which maybe this rapid fire won't be as rapid. But one of the things that we're going to be seeing with this full moon, and we already talked about the monkeypox thing. You know, I don't know if we should start referring to this the M problem. I don't know. God, like the algorithms. And I do see with everything going on with the Russell Hogg, with Neptune, these are all talking about also, guys, you know, infections, inflammations, viruses spreading, illnesses spreading. And when we are in we're very tight, I would say, 2 degrees for a full moon and a T-square. It's quite a tight T-square. I do see lots of problems there with these monkeypox, with the V situation that we have anyway right now. So I see that I see the numbers unfortunately growing, at least for the monkeypox, and I think I've already started to see something happening here where I'm at in Europe, in Spain. So more of these cases, more infections. Unfortunately, the negative side, I'm doing my best to give the negative side first and then move to the positive side. More infections, more cuts, more bites, more animal attacks. Unfortunately, guys, more drug overdoses. I think we're going to see that. I'm saying this with a heavy heart. Alcohol poisoning, food poisoning, overdoing it with those things. Overindulgence with those things, going just extreme, going into overboard with these matters. Easier to contact the V or get the V, unfortunately, I do see. And the M situation now, the monkeypox thing, I don't know how to say it. Let's see, I will say it monkeypox, and let's use monkeypox, and let's see if they block us or something. And now I want to mention a couple of things along the lines of the conflict that we're experiencing, or the world is experiencing in Ukraine. So also important to remember that there have been reports already coming out of Moldova. Unfortunately, the Russian regime, or I can't say 100% the Russian regime, but somebody is causing problems there as well. And behind the scenes, I took a look at the Astro cartography, and I do see, unfortunately, things after this full moon or during this full moon escalating there, people being more agitated there, more violence, aggression, conflict happening in Moldova. Obviously, Ukraine, I think, will continue as well. Now, let me see if I have anything. I think I have said most of the mundane things. Now, let's go into the personal rapid fire places of more illusions, more bullshitting yourself. Kind of like it can even be somebody outside. I would prefer, or I'm more seeing some feminine figure right now in this situation, pulling a veil over our heads, trying to manipulate us, trying to do something sketchy behind the scenes that maybe isn't the best action towards us. Emotional manipulation, unfortunately, do see happening during this time. A little bit of too much of optimism, too much of a naive way of looking at things, too much of a naive way of looking at the future, the longer term future that is all going to be just jolly and happy, just having a total blindfold over our eyes. So need to need to be really careful. And I want to mention one thing. This is important. I think I've said this in many videos. I'm going to say it again. I'm from Estonia. I'm from a country that has been very, very closely associated with Russia. What I mean by association, they've been raping, killing, doing bad things to my ancestors, to our land for a very, very, very long time. Now, what I hear a lot about in the social media is people, you know, kind of like glorifying the Russian regime, or putting very, very crazy ideas into people's minds. So fortunately or unfortunately, I have experienced quite directly, and by directly I say very, very close relatives who lived through this regime. Now, in one of those instances, and I just want to paint this picture for you for the next things that I'm about to say, is that I interviewed my close relative who lived through, and they were in a situation where they were actually, the Russian soldiers during the Second World War were discussing raping her. So fortunately, she managed to escape that situation, but she was close enough to hear them discussing that. So imagine, please imagine, put yourself into these shoes. And I want, whatever the freaking Russian regime starts to say or says in the news, it usually means the opposite. They don't, like, all of the common sense, anything, it doesn't apply. It's a different kind of, and why am I saying this with the Neptune? Unfortunately, these types of things that where the opposite things are being said, and the opposite matters actually behind the scenes are hidden from us, so we can't see them, and they're trying to pull a veil over our heads, over our minds, over the clear seeing. So this can happen a lot during this full moon, and especially if it comes out of the Russian camp. It's wild.
If we actually talk about this super full moon square Neptune is particularly in Pisces. It's about subversive propaganda, right? Neptune is to deceive.
Total deception, just extreme deception. And yeah, unfortunately this can happen a lot, guys. Now so yes, everything can seem too positive, even possible, but ground yourself in that. When I was looking at the trines from the Aries, there is a like emotional spurring into an action kind of energy here as well. I need an action, I need desire, I need and desire action and adventure, I would say. And the downside of that is, again, I go out, I go to a club, I do addictions, I do alcohol, I do drugs. Being too emotionally trusting, a bit naive, I would say, is here as well. Intuition a bit distorted, too optimistic here. And spurts of energy mixed with feeling tired and wiped out. So this is a weird one that I wrote here, but I want to pay attention to what is happening actually at the same time, because it's not only, obviously T-square involves, you know, 3 planets or 3 influences, and where Sun is also squaring Neptune. This can drain our energy for a little bit, definitely, while, you know, this Aries, Jupiter, Mars, and let's say a quite active fiery full moon is happening as well. So it's a mixed type of energy. I have a really good meditation for that, actually. It's too long right now, but anyway, use spiritual practices that are active. Use spiritual practices that are active instead of going into those weird places. Now, also, they're very easy to go into the victim role and playing the victim yourself, and then go into the addiction. Oh, poor me, I can't do anything. Nom, 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 nom. Basically, this is what I'm seeing. Like very, very annoying energy in that sense. But, you know, I mentioned already, like, the financial goals. I think the potential here to manifest something material practically is here to get the results with, especially considering Saturn has just gone into retrograde leading up to it, everything happening, courageous action in Aries, and we think we have a chance here to build at least something, or get the results with something as well. It's not only, you know, being super negative, and the results are or can be coming from higher education, teaching areas, obviously from your belief systems, even like reevaluating and you know, seeing those new belief systems as well that you have maybe have been working on now, are giving, you know, kind of like your life is maybe better, you created a better life. It can happen there as well. Traveling, foreign countries, foreign import export, teachers, spiritual teachers, gurus, mentor figures, a lot of those will be preaching. They will be on the YouTube or whatever, on the stages. The popes and these types of big figures will be there. And this is where I'm really adamant with the Neptune square. You know, the messages can be pretty, the words can be pretty. I'm very much personally doubting anything they will say during this full moon. Yeah, I think. Oh, one last thing. Attaining spiritual knowledge and higher knowledge is possible during this, let's say, super, like Donnie likes, super, what is it, strawberry moon. This is possible during this this time. So guys, be careful out there a little bit there.
Maybe they harvest strawberry over this full moon. I'm not sure. That's why they call it that.
Oh God.
Do you have anything more to add?
I think with this full moon, you can, you know, come in.
Right. Because the thing is that when I see this strawberry super full moon, this there was actually a total solar eclipse happening 18 months ago at around the same degrees, 23 degrees of Sagittarius. So for audiences who's got that, I think it's December 14, 2020, total solar eclipse, if at 23 degrees of Sagittarius, it aspects or highlights a very prominent part of your chart, this is like a continuation of that journey. So whatever that total solar eclipse activated 18 months ago in mid-December 2020, things will become or unfold to its full bloom state over this strawberry super full moon. And I also want to mention here that Sun and Moon both squaring Neptune. On one hand, yes, it can be very psychically very permeable in terms of a period in our psyche. And this may drain our vitality because it's a full moon, everything's projected outwards, outside of us. And this can be psychically very overwhelming when middle of June actually hits us. And there may be also this sense of confusion that as if like something is foreboding or taking over our whole life. There can be this kind of like tsunami kind of wave of feeling. Or it can be this kind of hard to explain inner discontentment because Neptune is about divine discontent. And hence you may kind of be a glutton for self-punishment, which is also Pisces. But then there can be this kind of, oh, poor me, right? Poor me, you know, this kind of energy that may come forth. But one thing I want to add regarding that, was it Russell Hogg? Whatever it's pronounced, that fixed star at 20.
I'm
20
not sure either.
Yeah.
I'm not sure either how you pronounce it.
At 20 over degrees of Sagittarius. What really struck me is that it's very close to the triggering point because I've been doing an alternative study of what actually triggered that Russia-Ukraine thing. And for this one, I actually tracked, okay, this is a very, seldom discussed part of astrology. I actually looked at the nodal axis of Mars. And back then, when the Russian-Ukraine war actually started, guess where the south node of Mars is very close to that 23-degree point of Sagittarius. And that point is also like a crucial point because I think Putin's Mars is at 26 of Sagittarius. And it's triggered by the transit south node of Mars. And that Mars in Putin's chart is somewhat linked to Zelensky and also the Ukraine chart. And I find that this is almost like painting to me there's like a turning point because we're talking about a super full moon. So anything that super full moon comes, everything bubbles to the surface and everything's in full bloom to be seen. Maybe there's a turning point to things over this strawberry full moon. I'm not sure. But since it's a super full moon, things can go anywhere, as particularly when it's a super full moon in Sagittarius. It's a mutable sign. Things can go crooked either way, okay? Or there can be like a undermining of associations, talking about perhaps NATO as well. Pertaining to that, there may be a lot more like propaganda or fake news because that's what the full moon, both with Sun and Moon both squaring Pisces, Neptune in Pisces can be about. There'll be like propaganda in full force. So you may want to look out for that. But more importantly, if I were to look at the main, I would say, cluster of conjunctions over this super full moon, I can't look away from that Mars and Chiron conjunction within the same degree in Aries. Mars and Chiron conjunctors can be assertively reaching out to those who need help and healing, but doing this in an often subtle, indirect way that can be quite effective. Or this can be working to build a new world order. Just putting it out there. But we have the ability to transform destructive energies into constructive ones, as well as apply destructive energies where they are most needed to clear the way for something higher. Hopefully we go towards that route. It's also the ability to get to the heart of a conflict and hence resolve it or direct it along positive lines rather than arguing in circles. I hope this happens as well.
I'll say just one more thing, guys. The thing that Donis just said reminded me of a thing that I see happening, and it happened to me. It was like a person contacted me. They were, I think they were like an astrologer, spiritual healer type person or a psychic type person. And they said, you know, do you want a consultation? I was like, no, thank you, I'm good. And they said, but you have a lot of issues, emotional issues, personal, you know, the person started doing that. And this is, again, like Dottie said, this is a very similar type of energy. If you're listening to this and you do that, please don't do that, you know.
Okay. And Mars and Chiron together, this can also mean having the confidence to not hold back when you sense what you need to do. And it's also about the ability to act, pause, without having to have a mental or logical justification to do so. You just do, you know. But this conjunction can also represent the growth of your ability to engage in conflict in the most life-supporting way possible as well. And I've also written here that the power of seeing into the roots of conflict so that it can be healed deeply and profoundly from the root level. And last but not least, this can also mean the ability to take initiative based on the guidance of spiritual forces as well. Another very important, I would say, cluster of conjunctions that I've my eyes straight we go to is that North Node, conjunct Venus, and also on the other side that's not plotted within here is Pallas Athenas, which is probably about 22, 23 degrees of Taurus. So you've got North Node, Pallas Athenas, and Venus together. When all three bodies are so close together in the sign of Taurus, and I've dug into my books to see what this is about, this can actually be some form of association with females or democratic issues because Pallas Athenas represent democracy. Venus is there conjunct the North Node. This can be a collective issue that's relating to women. Okay? And when I think about 19 degrees of Taurus, 20 degrees of Taurus, I think Pallas Athenis is at 22 degrees of Taurus. They are all forming this aspect called the quincunx, or the in conjunct to that moon. And moon is also a feminine planet in Sagittarius. So this makes me wonder if this can be tied up with the law pertaining to bodily or health related issues that's regarding women that may come forth. And not to forget that, I think Ian mentioned this earlier, that this fixed star called Russell Hague, whatever, how it's pronounced, it has Venus and Saturn themes as well tied to it. So Venus is woman, and then Saturn is something to do with the law as well. And then this strawberry super full moon is also in a sign of Sagittarius, which is also representing the law. And not to mention that I just dug up when Ian was talking that this fixed star at around 23 degrees of Sagittarius, it actually rules the right side of the groin of the human body. So this can be something that is reproductive related, close to the sacral and the root chakra, that is. And I actually went on to dig further and looked at the astrocartography or ACG map. And over this full moon, Neptune, which is what the sun and moon actually squares quite closely to, less than 2 degrees or around 2 degrees, Neptune is actually culminating or at the 10th house part of the chart over this new moon around the Washington or Florida area. So this can be something to tie in with, if I were to bring in the feminine health and all those things, this can be dealing with issues regarding this thing called Roe and Wade, ROE, VS, WADE, in which I'll go into it in a small moment. This is pertaining to abortion rights of women. So this very much ties into the main theme here. I think we're going to hear something from the Supreme Court, Supreme Court Sagittarius, something to do with some kind of feminine health and rights to their body, Taurus. You know, everything in Taurus in conjunct with that Sagittarius moon. And not to mention that we recently got a very horrific gun massacre in Texas, I think. And that also has a lot of things to do with what are the regulations pertaining to that, you know, in which I'll touch on to that later. And not to mention that where Neptune is 25 of Pisces is very close to the USA's national chart 4th house cusp. So the IC point of the USA chart is around 25 of Pisces, just to put it in perspective. And so this, I would say this super full moon is very tied to the USA chart in a lot of ways as well. And not to mention that in Florida, in which I just mentioned, I've actually checked social media and also do my own research, and there's some very horrific regressive legislative direction in that state of Florida that pertains to women's bodies as well, which I find it quite shocking in 2022. I thought we've progressed past that, but hey. And Neptune, it is anti-culminating, which means that it's at the lowest point in the chart along the countries Burma, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh. And this actually tells me that, or suggests that the chaos and social unrest and accompanying riots are reiterated here. And these countries, which I just mentioned, are close to or already have joined the list of countries that's going bankrupt. And the planet that rules bankruptcy is Neptune. And also Neptune can rule floods as well and tsunamis. So I wonder if those countries which I just mentioned, Bangladesh, Burma, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, all those places, might also experience a wetter monsoon season as well, linked to Neptune. And Neptune is rising. That means at the ascendant point, when this super full moon occurs very close to New Zealand. So I wonder if this may imply possible developments linked to the upcoming local elections taking place later on in 2022 for them. I've managed to dug out the date. So in New Zealand, the local elections will take place on 8th of October of 2022. And the transiting sun will be at 14 to 15 degrees of Libra. Look at where the opposite point is, where Mars and Chiron are. So some things are making more and more sense. And not to forget that when the sun hits 14 or 15 degrees of Libra, when that local election, which will be taking place in New Zealand, is also squaring the asteroid series in Cancer. Also, on 8th of October 2022, there will be a transit Mercury in Virgo squaring Mars in Gemini. And this will link up with the Sun, Moon, and Neptune to form a grand square as well. So I feel that it is very much tied to that local elections in New Zealand, in which we'll hear more about on 8th of October 2022. Maybe there's some kind of political change or fundamental shifts. And I just want to share as well, pertaining to some charts in which I pulled up. So I may need to share my screens in which I pull up. And I've pulled up the USA and Biden's chart, and also Russia's chart and Putin's chart as well. So the inner wheel will be the USA chart, which I use to track all sorts of predictive stuff with. And then the outer wheel is this strawberry super full moon. And you can see I've color-coded like a Virgo would. So everything in gray are in, I will call that like it happens in the 1st, 4th, 7th, 10th house. And those things which are color-coded, usually those are like conjunctions and oppositions, just for reference. And so Mars and Chiron over this strawberry super full moon will be opposing USA Saturn pretty tightly, so on and so forth. And if I were to look at whatever's going on collectively, just to put everything short and sweet, this really ties back to the intense division or release of opinions. People will be bickering nonstop. Because look at where the USA Mars is, 21 degrees of Gemini, and the Sun is at 23 degrees of Gemini over this super full moon. And this can be pertaining to a national, on a national level, what the Supreme Court actually decides pertaining to the important civil dispute of sorts. And this is really pertaining to the Roe versus Wade, which was a landmark decision by the US Supreme Court, in which the court ruled that the Constitution of the United States protects a pregnant woman's liberty to choose to have an abortion without excessive governmental restriction. So a lot pertaining to that. So the theme of like women's rights come into place over here. And these are all the triggers, you know. So in essence, if I actually lay out in layman's term, this can be concerning laws pertaining to the choice of abortion and motherhood, and together with the biological choice and autonomy pertaining to the female body within the country. And I will go on to say that this may actually serve as a black swan event that may lead down the path of societal fragmentation. Change of leadership is also possible, because look at where Neptune is transiting. It's very close to the USA's 4th house cusp, and USA's Neptune is in the opposite sign, close to those degrees as well. There's some kind of things going on, and at its worst, this may actually be the beginning of a potential civil war down the road breaking out, because they are actually indicators of infighting or delusions, both on a political stance or directional standpoint. And this may come from the country's leaders, but this may also happen on the ground as well. And not to mention that I just want to piggyback on what actually happened last month pertaining to the, shootout and all those kind of things. So there can be also very divided opinions pertaining to gun laws that's in the USA right now. And this can be based on what actually happened in Texas. So this is what's happening in the USA chart. And in Biden's chart, I actually don't see as much activations going on. But one thing is for sure is that whatever's highlighted here are conjunctions and oppositions. And I've also included a trine because it's pretty tight. Because Neptune is very much highlighted under this super full moon. And then Neptune is directly trine Biden's Jupiter. Very close, even, is within half a degree. What this is telling me is that if I were to mesh everything together, this suggests that he stands on the Roe versus Wade thing. And also controlling of guns in the country. He may be kind of, how do I put this, evasive or very neither here or there, sideways, like what Neptune does, neither here or there. And this can be stemming from him potentially feeling very mentally exhausted. I think with me and Ian, we've actually discussed about the overall kind of trajectory of a decline in mental health with him. He's probably even more exhausted now, and his capacity to think may be a bit compromised. So this may even brew even more unrest, because it's our leaders are not making a stance of yes, no, maybe, so this can be brewing some things. And then if I actually go on to how this strawberry super full moon, it's a mouthful, is impacting Russia's chart, this actually tells me that there may be constraints pertaining to the country's youth. And as we know, most of Russia's soldiers comes from their children. This is not a rocket science. And fifth house is also about leisure spending as well. So many people are not spending money in the malls, which is fifth house as well. And all these are kind of brewing as a larger economic crisis. Because on one hand, we know that Russia has got a declining population, and then fifth house rules children, a lot of fifth house activation, and their children are going to war. You know where Mars is? Mars is war, and it is in Russia's fifth house. And it's activated by that moon on Russell Hawk, whatever. And there's a lot of this kind of energies that's brewing up stuff. Not to forget that Pluto, under this super full moon, is in Russia's sixth house as well. So this can be losing some form of grip on a financial and also human capital level in terms of the country's young and male soldiers involved in the whatever war that's going on with Ukraine. Because sixth house can be the traditional house that rules enemies as well. And let's go on to Putin's chart, because this is interesting. So over this strawberry full moon, super full moon that is, somehow it tells me that there's some kind of heart or neurological mobility or mental health issues that may come up, perhaps because of this drawn out war or conflict that's going on with Ukraine. That's the most logical thing all of us can see. But it overall suggests he's on the decline. And this can be tied to also behind the scenes betrayals or some kind of infighting in his inner circle, which can benefit the opponent. I suppose what we're referring to is Zelensky and Ukraine. And since this is a super full moon as well, that came from a total solar eclipse, this can actually pose a very crucial turning point of events pertaining to this conflict. Not to mention that this full moon highlights Putin's second and eighth house. Second and eighth house is the resource house. And Second house is also the value of the ruble. If we talk about the country's chart. So this can be something of further unfavorable in terms of developments to the value of the ruble and the state of the Russian economy. However, there's one thing I need to end on. External help might be on Putin's way, and this may be somewhat favorable for him. And this is because his part of fortune is very much in direct highlight to this super full moon. So help may be coming from others, which is the 8th house as well. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think we can
move on to the next one.
We have, I think, only one lunation to go.
Yes. So do you want to share
yes.
The chart?
Yep.
Or should I stop sharing first? Okay. Oh yeah. So would you think that we have stepped out of eclipse portal when this new moon hits?
For me, you know, my understanding and my experience and my observation, like the eclipses, they last for a while. Maybe the most intense ones, let's put it that way, or the most intense manifestations. But right now, I'm still kind of like, things are happening. Things are happening. Things are still a little bit there. But let's say, okay, so 29th. So we're already a month and a half from the last eclipse. So
right.
Yeah, let's put it this way, kind of.
Okay. Now, this new moon actually is pretty special, at least in my books, because it's unusual that 5 planets in the sky are in their own sign of rulership. I'm talking about the moon in Cancer, Mercury in Gemini, Mars is still in Aries, Saturn is still in Aquarius, and not to mention that Neptune is still in his home sign in Pisces. But however, this new moon, I find it pretty explosive. This is because the new moon actually, to the degree, squares that Jupiter in Aries, and the ruler of Jupiter, which is Mars, is in a very tight square with Pluto, hence the explosiveness of energy. And Mars is also applying to square Pluto as well. Applying aspects are still building in terms of its intensity, and hence that. And since this new moon is to the degree squaring that Jupiter, I've also looked into the ACG or astrocartography over this new moon. And Jupiter is actually culminating, which means that it's at its highest point in the sky in Russia, in Middle East, and surrounding countries. And this can be talking about energy or resource-related conflicts and wars going on pertaining to their place in order to secure their place. I mean, as we know that, how expensive, natural gas and petrol or diesel are right now. So this can be further like exaggerating Jupiter, that situation. And who can be the winner who takes it all, which is that Aries energy. And then the ruler is also in Aries, which is Mars, squaring Pluto. So it's like the winner takes it all. Who can be what does this describe? Ninja warrior? Like who can really, at the end, take it all? There's this kind of like grabbing energy, like who can actually be the ultimate survivor, of the situation. There's something going on in Russia and Middle East. And Jupiter is also on the anti-culmination point, which means the lowest point in the chart, over the places such as the east coast of Canada and the east coast of USA. This can actually tell me that this can hint at some kind of natural disasters or geoseismic activities over there. Because Jupiter is in the 4th house, which is like the land surrounding it. There may be like the land is, Jupiter is to like have something, well, explode. That's one of the things I get. And then the ruler of that Jupiter is squaring Pluto, even more something brewing from the ground up. Or maybe it can be something to do with like oil drilling as well. There's something to do with that. Over the east coast of Canada and USA. And Jupiter is also rising, that means on the ascendant, rising over Brazil. So it's telling me that this Cancer new moon can be something to do with significant developments that's being seeded pertaining to the political infighting or struggles that is leading up to the general election that's taking place in Brazil on 2nd of October 2022, which is Libra season. And where is the sun in terms of position when 2nd of October 2022 happens? 8 degrees of Libra, which is squaring that new moon point and also opposing that Jupiter position. So something's going on there. People in Brazil, please put, in the comment section what's going on over this new moon in Cancer. And Jupiter is setting, which is on its 7th house cusp, over the country Australia. What this is telling me is that this can manifest as the formation of a new government, since Australia just had a federal election and is undergoing a massive change or transition after 9 years of the coalition. So friends who are watching this in Australia, please put in the comments below, tell me more what's going on, because I can only read so much news before I go crazy. And so going back to a more psychological level, when I see a new moon squaring Jupiter, and this is a superior square, by the way, because Jupiter is squaring from Aries to the sign of Cancer. This, on a personal level, this can be harnessed in quite a nice way, as in like, it can represent like wholehearted enthusiasm, or you're thriving on hope and optimism. Perhaps, new moon in Cancer, you need to play things more defensively, because Cancer is a very defensive sign. Although it's squared by Jupiter, means that it still gives it that zhuzh, that juice, that courage, the bravado. But then, yeah, be more selective and also be more defensive in terms of your approach, even if you've got so much, ambition, and drive, Aries in Jupiter in Aries energy to really go for stuff. I would say that you have to look out for unconsidered actions or outburst episodes, and that's coming from the ruler of Jupiter, which is Mars squaring Pluto, which is still applying to perfect the square. So something tells me about underhanded manipulation going on as well, because of that Mars square Pluto energy. So I guess the best thing I can tell people is to be upfront, with that Jupiter in Aries energy, to be more upfront and be direct. Don't go sideways like, oh, I'm trying to say this, but I meant to say X, but I do Y. You know what I mean? Just be more aligned with what you want intention-wise and follow that through with the action. Don't just kind of like change course halfway. And one more thing that I want to share is that I've also inputted this new moon's transit picture into the USA chart, into Biden's chart, and I've also input this into Zelensky and Ukraine's chart as well. What actually this new moon tells me is that there'll be a lot of activities that ties the USA and Ukraine together. And what I'm talking about is perhaps there's a new expenditure or spending bill from USA side to be given to Ukraine. So friends in the USA, I don't know if there's some kind of announcements over this new moon, end of June, but it seems like the benefactor is Ukraine here. Yeah, there's a whole list of activations in which I don't want to like drag the audience through, but this is the summary of things that I found out. So do you have anything to add pertaining to this new moon?
I have a little bit, but just amazing coverage. Well done, sir. I have a little bit to say again, but I want to say it in a little bit of a rapid fire kind of way here, because I think Donnie mentioned everything important that we have, like the influences in play. For me, one of the key things here is that they're extremely exact, almost by the minute freaking square of the new moon and Jupiter itself. So when I look at this, and when I was looking at this, what will happen, let's say globally more or mundane level, is extreme patriotism I see happening here. It's just like people being really rah patriotism, nationalism I see happening here, unfortunately. Be the judge of if this is good or bad. I like the golden middle road more so. I don't like the extremes specifically. So especially in Europe, I do see this happening, and what I do see happening is military spending, border protection, like police spending, all of these types of we need to protect the land, we need to protect ourselves, we need to put boundaries up. Again, guys, we're going with this, with what is happening in Aries, but remember, Cancer is a lot about protection. It's a lot about also boundaries. So I see this being in the news, bills announced. We're going to be putting that much money into police, military, machines, these types of things. And, I do see the people just calling for it as well. And the fear, and again, especially a little bit more in Europe, is there. So it's kind of like yearned for, or desired, or wanted, and like the negative side of this is I unfortunately do see the kind of like nationalistic behavior happening in mostly Europe. It can happen in other places as well. Defense systems I mentioned here as well. Military action to protect, I put here about those, let's say, global things, more of that energy there. Now, on a personal level, or on personal manifestations, be careful with those overflowing emotions. Now, Cancer can be, let's say, holding it on very tightly for a long period and then bursting out. This is a very, very Cancerian, unfortunately, trait. And with this, we can a little bit bring in Mars as well. It's still a sign-based square, exact square with Jupiter, just building up, and then just unloading to other people and towards other people. It can happen. Obviously, it can just be crying, and you're releasing things there as well. And remember, guys, I think every new moon, I think we're recording this even during new moon, or very close to it. And it's like when the energy builds up, especially a couple of days, you can already subconsciously and consciously feel something needs to leave, something needs to release in order to give way to this new beginning, new start. And it's very common for us humans to tightly grip and hold on to the things that we most likely should be releasing. And I do see a lot of that possibility here as well, especially with this Cancer. Although later on, is Cancer still a cardinal sign, can I think release a little bit easier than, let's say, maybe a Scorpio. So release as well, and be on the lookout for this type of like passive aggressive behavior. Like I'm holding on to emotions, feelings. I have these feelings inside of me. I have the shell over me, and I think like the other people need to know what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing, actually what I'm desiring from them. But you know, that's the maybe a little bit of an immature Cancer way of dealing with things. Open your mouth, say, listen, I'm feeling like this, and we need to talk about it. We need to discuss this. Instead of turning into a shell, like I'm you know, pouting and doing these types of behaviors, like you know, I'm doing my best Cancerian kind of acting. But I think
You know
get
what I'm
the
about to
bit.
say?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's almost like, because the South Node in Scorpio, the co-rulers Mars and Pluto are in a applying square. What I got was there's a constipation of buried anger and frustration that's surfacing up.
Unfortunately, I agree. Or like, I don't want to, you know, because it's uncomfortable, guys. You know, it's uncomfortable to release this, and we have to release this. And there's a lot of focus on, you know, I mentioned the boundaries and the protection of the countries, but it's like your own personal boundaries, and you know, these are all important as well. And let's say if something is here, like somebody oversteps those boundaries, again, you need to be direct, not go into the pouting type place or getting your needs met in a passive aggressive way. Okay, so big topic personally, also safety. Like, what do I need for safety? What are the foundations I need to feel safe, to feel happy, to be able to create and make things in the world? What do I need? What do I need? How do I need to be nurtured? You know, as well. Very important topic here. And before that, remember every topic I mentioned right now, when we're talking about Cancer, family, mother, everything, before leading up and before the new beginning, something has to be released, and that's uncomfortable. Initiating after the releasing has been done, initiating new things and changes because I desire and I yearn and I need these emotional boundaries, and as well as that safety. So this is a new moon where I see like a lot of people, okay, so this isn't working. Oh, I don't feel safe. I need to experience and create and make safety in my life. So now after the new moon, I will take action and initiative. And this is why I see that one of the reasons I see that nationalism and you know, military spending, like what do we do to protect, how do we protect the boundaries? Now, I mean, it's a fertile sign, Cancer. For some of you, it can, especially I think on 7 degrees, if you have a lot of things there, it can mean some activation in regarding pregnancy, a new beginning, new growth into the family. So hopefully that goes well for you guys. Emotional, I think I see also a lot of emotional ups and downs here. With this new moon, because it's so expansive. This Jupiter is so expansive and overflowing. It's like it's like everything is like expanding so much. I'm kind of like tiptoeing between the like put up boundaries and then like the overflowing emotionality can be used in a more balanced way, I would say here. It's like observe when you're going to the like big Jupiterian overflowing emotions, and notice also when your boundaries are being crossed, and in this case I mean emotional boundaries, when these are being crossed. What did I want to say also? Yeah, being overflowing with emotions one moment, then pulling back and retreating into the protective shell. Now, one thing I forgot to mention about, let's say, more global or more bigger scale events is I do see a lot of people, at least, well, for some of you it has been happening earlier, but with everything else going on, and this happening in Cancerian sign, which is a lot to do with farming. Taurus is as well, yes, I'll give that, but for me, Cancer also is to do with farming. So I do see a lot of people, you know, let's let's start community farm. Let's start our farm. Let's start growing food. Let's start doing something along those lines and putting that effort in. And a lot of those, things are coming to the surface because people don't feel safe. The prices are so high. Okay, let's do something about it. Let's initiate something in regards to that. And I think most things I said. Just rapid fire, new beginnings in the following areas: personal safety, personal happiness, home environment, real estate, land ownership, nurturing family, mother, safety, happiness, security, deeper emotional feelings. There is a tendency there to release and start anew. Taking care of others, parenting, very important. Things associated with breasts, womb, fertility also coming up. I think that's it for me.
And for me, just to end on a note, because I don't think I mentioned Russia and Putin's chart pertaining to this new moon. No, it's fine. I can just speak off like whatever I found, because Russia's independence chart has got the south node at 9 degrees of Cancer, which is very close to this new moon point. And Putin has actually got Chiron in his third house at 7 degrees of Capricorn, directly opposing the new moon point. And if I were to link these connections, and not to mention that Saturn in this new moon chart is falling quite tightly onto the midpoint between Neptune and Pluto, because Saturn is clipped in between these two planets. This is telling me that in terms of the whole Russia situation and their stance on the, of whatever's going on with Ukraine, Russia is actually having a gradual decline in terms of its powers and faculties to drag this longer. So there's this kind of, it's almost like this kind of showing of signs of it's not holding up well. It's not able to like grip onto this war over this June's lunations. It just suggests to me that it's not holding up very well on Russia's side. That's one of the things I can contribute. And not to mention that Neptune is also on the midpoint of Mars and Saturn. So the shortest distance between Mars and Saturn is where Neptune actually sits. This also talks about waning powers and weakening efforts pertaining to some kind of war event. But then this also tells me that there can be some underlying activities over this new moon as well, because Neptune does rule poison. Neptune also rules gases, and Neptune also rules epidemic. So I don't know if someone's gonna play dirty over this new moon. I'm just saying out there. I'm just putting it out there, really. I don't want to elaborate too much. So do you have anything to add as a closing to this event-filled or eventful June 2022?
Oh, guys, I think there's so much for us to use here, to keep in mind, to navigate. In my mind, yes, we could take a break during the summer, which I'm not recommending actually. Obviously, rest here and there, but my recommendation is obviously to put efforts in during the summer, to keep working, keep building, keep making things. Be careful what you're fed, obviously, in the media. What is the global bigger narrative? And I would even say right now the alternative media, let's call it alternative media, is gathering strength, and it's big and it's online, it's everywhere. That's my rough estimate. I would call 90% of it just total garbage for me. And like always look at where's the proof. How can I prove this? Is this really happening? Is this also used to manipulate? Is this also used to put you in a camp, somebody else's narrative, to serve somebody else's narrative? And yeah, be really careful. Put up boundaries. I think one of the first things we talked about during this is about those dangerous energies coming our way, and I unfortunately see it as a bigger theme even than this month. It actually for a couple of years I do see this theme, and I recommend using the things that we said to help yourself to get more freedom and liberation. And please let us know in the comments, obviously, what you think about the course or the thing we're preparing with Donnie. And follow, like, subscribe, share, and all that good stuff. And I really appreciate you guys. I'm getting a lot of messages. I'm getting a lot of positive messages as well. I know we talk about the negative ones that we get sometimes, but we're getting a lot of positive messages from you guys, and from even like people I looked up to, and from one of the teachers. And it's good to see, good to hear, and that encouragement is keeping us in the jousting. We're jousting in the streets of life as well as just as like you, and appreciate you guys.
Yes, and I think as a parting note, you will find that May, June, even into early July, you'll be finding that these few months will be when you make the most key decisions into building the reality that you want, and not living other people's agenda or narrative as your reality. So some of us may be relocating or plans to. Some of us may be changing jobs or careers, maybe from a corporate job to, I don't know, someone who is like doing remote work. Therefore, it just makes you like a digital nomad in terms of lifestyle altogether. And those like big key decisions, I've actually seen people making those since last month when Mercury was stationing to go retrograde. And now they're kind of like firming up some plans, this and that, pertaining to clients. Some of my clients are actually like trying to convert their house into something else, like growing their own foods, converting it to a very like communal living space. I think one of my clients actually has got a plot of land, and she decided to make it divide out the land, and other people can pay money in terms of growing certain crops. And so what she does is to harvest those things and sell them to this person at a promised price. So this is kind of like, going towards those kind of more self-sustaining ways of living. And then within each tent, is a mix of crops. So people who don't have the actual space to do that actually approach her, rent a tent, and you've got one small plot of beetroot and one other part onions and so on and so forth. And it's actually going towards that renting of land for growing things. That this business model is circled around, and I wish her the best. I think she's utilizing the energies now the best that it is.
I just want to say, I think that's amazing. I hope, guys, if you listen to this, they are inspired, that you will at least grow food like that, and you're inspired, and you do help yourself through that, but help that person who had that initiative. And personally, I'm going not in an entirely similar route, but I'm going to do it myself. I'm starting to grow things for ourselves, and I think this is, guys, freaking important. Whether it is communal gardens, you have terrace, you can do that stuff there, guys. Make it happen, initiate things, and let's become free.
I gotta wait till I get out of Singapore. There's no land to grow anything here.
You will probably need to come to Fuerteventura. There's a lot of land here.
Is that where you are? You haven't told the audience where you've relocated to.
Yeah, guys, this is. I think I've kept it.
Announcement time.
I kept it as a secret on purpose. I wanted to build it up. I'm on a, we can call it a small remote island. It's on in Spain. It's in the Canary Islands. It's called Fuerteventura. It's quite. I love it here personally. Things are a little bit different, obviously, from mainland Europe, but for me, it's right now the place to be.
Fantastic. Maybe there's another time when I visit Europe. I don't think I'll be going there for some time to come.
Probably.
So
a good
till
idea.
July, when we sit down and discuss what's going on.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.